What's up, Gromies? Welcome to the first episode of Chalk Talk. I'm very excited to be bringing you guys this series. I felt like I had the chalkboard here. It was from the last homeowner, and he had his advanced nutrient chart on here. So I thought it was really cool when I bought the house that someone was already growing down here. So I'm very excited to bring you guys this content. It's going to be something a little different. We're not going to be showing any plants. It's going to be everything on the board. We're just going to be talking knowledge, everything that has to do with good gardening practices. So you can see up here, which let me get my roach clip pointer, isn't that dope? So I got research here twice. So the reason I put research here twice is because that's what led me to my success early on. Is I did all the research years before I even started growing. I don't think that you necessarily need to do that. You can get right into growing, and that's why I'm making this channel, so we can walk you through how I went about it and how some other growers went about it. So research. When you're doing research, stay away from the bro science for now. There's a lot of good universities and great growers that are putting factual scientific data out there. Follow those guys. So there's going to be a lot of people out there on the internet. There's going to be a lot of forums. So when you're thinking about this, think about their reputation. Who are they working with? Who are they talking with? Are they just a random person? And I don't think there's any wrong with finding new education, but make sure that it's got some backing, because a lot of content creators and stuff, they can send you down a wrong path. So this is why I'm showing you how I do things in my garden. I don't think it's necessarily the perfect way to do it, but I think that it's worked for me. If you check out my Instagram, McCannabis Luke, you can see that I'm a very good grower and I'm a very humble guy. So for me to say that I'm a good grower, trust me, I'm willing to take you guys down an easy path to show you how I did it step by step and everything you need to do to get into growing. So like I said, research, find the good people. Build a Soil's got a good channel. You know I'm a huge advocate of them, but there's Clactamus Coots, there's Elaine Ingham, there's Kiss Organics, there's so many good research out there. And if you don't know where to look or where to start, because it can get troubling sometimes, get a hold of me. I'll show you the podcasts that I use. I'll show you some of the forums that I've read and some of the content creators that I have followed. So let's go ahead and dive into this thing. So when you're starting to grow, you're going to need to decide, are you going to go in a tent or are you going to go in a room? If you have the space to do a room, I highly recommend this, just because when I started growing, I grew in a 3x3 tent and it was fun. I loved growing, don't get me wrong, but now that I'm getting into the bigger tents, there's nothing like walking inside your own garden. And so just keep that in mind if you want to do a tent. If you're in a space to where you can't control the lung room per se, then you're going to want to grow in a tent. It's just going to make it easier on everything, your environment, your lighting. And so decide that. You need to decide grow room or a tent. If you're going to go with a tent, there's a lot of good companies out there. There's AC Infinity, there's Spider Farmer, there's VivoSun. I've used them all, I've worked with them all, and they're all great quality companies. They care about you, the grower. They're going to take care of you. If you have an issue, they will reimburse you. They have a really good warranties on all their stuff because they back their stuff. So that's why I back them, because they take care of you, they take care of me. They're just like us. They're just growers, and they found these good companies and worked their way in through them, or however that worked out. So keep that in mind when you're going into getting a tent. There's so many different sizes. If you're just trying to do a budget small grow, I'd recommend a 3x3. You can go smaller, but I don't think you're going to get the yields that you're expecting to yield. So start in a 3x3, but there's also 4x4s, there's 5x5s, there's 8x8s, there's 10x10s. There's so many ways to decide how you want to grow. So you got to decide what your lifestyle is going to be. Now, I want you to think of this too, because if you buy these small tents and you're obviously in a legal area, you got to think about the future. You got to think about, do you want to expand? Do you want to grow? What's your end game? What's your goal? Are you just trying to grow enough for you? Do you have a wife? Do you have family that you need to support, or however you need to do it? Keep that in mind. So if you're thinking about getting a 3x3 tent, get a 4x4 tent. If you're thinking about getting a 4x4 or 5x5 tent, get the next size bigger. I just think that you're really gonna love this, to have the room to go around your whole grow, which is, people forget sometimes that you pack these tents full, and then come training, come defoliation, you can't even get in there to do anything. So then your defoliation lacks, and if your environment's not on point, you're gonna have problems. So keep that in mind when you're going with tents. So our next one here is going to be the environment. Now you can see I put a star by it. Environment is everything when it comes to gardening. We run off this VPD, which is your vapor pressure deficit. It's a combination of your temperature and humidity. You're going to want to find that chart The Pulse Grow has a great chart that a lot of people stand by, and it's going to tell you your numbers. It's just a calculation, like I said, of the temperature and humidity. These are very crucial when it comes to gardening because it's how the plant's stomata are going to open. It's how they're going to uptake things. It's going to prevent powdery mildew. It's going to prevent a bunch of things. So one thing I highly stress is environment. You gotta have good environment, or your lighting, your tents, your nutrients, your genetics, they're going to fail. I can promise you that. So we're gonna dive into all these topics. This first episode, I just want to cover you my favorite steps to how I got into growing. So the environment, you're gonna want to decide about, do you need a dehumidifier? Are you in a basement? Are you in a place where it's very dry? In other states like Las Vegas or Nevada, they're very dry over there, so they need a lot of humidity. I'm in Michigan in a basement, so I need quite the opposite. I'm usually pulling humidity out of my grow room. I do have humidifiers, which I recommend having both. You don't have to, so kind of eliminate that weakness. So if, like I said, if you're really dry, get a humidifier. If you're really moist, get a dehumidifier. If you can get both, I highly recommend it. But like I said, we're going to try to teach budget growing, getting to new growing, and not having to spend a bunch of money and skipping some steps along the way. So also that goes with the environment is you're going to want good fans to be circulating that air. You're going to want an intake and an outtake, which when I say intake and outtake, you want fresh air coming in and you want it cycling out the bad air. And you have these fans pushing this air around, so you create this cycle. Just like in nature, there's no stagnant air. There's usually some sort of breeze moving around, moving the leaves around, giving it fresh air to breathe, because just because we grow indoors doesn't mean we got to forget about how outdoor nature works, how trees work, how all of growing things work. So we're going to dive more into that, but we'll go ahead and go to our next one, which is our light. So lighting these days it's a lot simpler than it used to be. They had HPS and halides and stuff like that, and I was fortunate enough to start in LEDs, which nowadays they're running these Samsung 301 diodes that you can pretty much find with any company. I like to stick to the AC Infinity, the Spider Farmer, and the Vivo Sun, just because I know they have good quality products and they'll take care of you if something goes wrong. I run all Spider Farmer lights for the most part in my grow room, and that's just who I started with, and I didn't have any issues, and I've loved their lights, so I never switched. I don't have anything against the AC Infinity lights. I just got a new Vivo Sunlight. So like I said, these are all great companies. Just do your research, find the backing. If there's a lot of, like Mars Hydro, they got good products as well. So I stand by all these companies. They're just trying to get the home grower more involved, and like I said, skip steps. That's what we want to do, is make this transition easier when you get into growing, is have good quality points here that's going to lead you to success. So next one, I put a star, soil and pots. This is probably the most important thing to me. So when you're growing organically, which is what I'm going to teach, I will slowly cover on synthetics, but I only grew it for very little, so I don't have a lot of input on that, and I didn't do very well. So I don't think that's anything to do with synthetics. My lifestyle didn't work. I'm a very busy guy, so organics worked for me. So when you're getting soil, there's a lot of good soils out there. You can make your own soils. There's a third to third to third ratio that I like to stand by, which is your peat moss, your aeration, and your vermicompost, or some sort of nutrition. And bigger pots, the bigger pot size, the more success. So you can start in 1 gallons, 3 gallons, 5 gallons, but you're going to struggle, especially in organics, because you just can't keep up with that food. As soon as they outgrow that container, you're going to be struggling to keep up with moisture and food. So I highly recommend 15 gallons or more when you're growing organic, just to be able to step back a little bit more, do more research when you have the time and you're not in there every day trying to pH and fix everything. So soil, there's a lot of good companies. Like I said, I stand by Build-A-Soil. It's what I used. It's a very balanced system that they use there. They have charts to help you if you're a new grower, but that's what's so fun about Build-A-Soil, is you don't need a chart. You don't need measuring cups. You don't need any of that. I dump nutrition in my hand, or I sprinkle it in the soil, because organics is very forgiving, and a little bit goes a long way. So always go less, and you can add more later. So we'll dive more into soil eventually. I kind of touched on nutrients a little bit, so there's a lot of good nutrition out there that you can use in a lot of different varieties. There's so many different forms of nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium that you can get. Just make sure you're getting it from a good source. I don't like to use like the blood meal and the bone meal, because that is from bigger companies that are using their waste to make more money off of that, and it's just not good products, I feel like. So stick away from the blood and the bone meals. But other than that, there's so many ways to go about the soil in this organic system. There's so many good living soil growers these days that can help you along the way. Get a hold of me and I'll show you what soils I used in my garden, or maybe recommend how you would make your own. I haven't made my own yet. I'm very excited to do that. I bought the Take and Bake kit from Build a Soil, and it's just in different forms, and you get to mix and build your own soil, and that was so much fun. So I can't imagine making your own compost and sourcing your own stuff and make your own soil. So we'll get into that more. We're going to go down here to water, which water in organics is very easy. You can use tap water. Just make sure that your ppms on a TDS meter isn't very high. 100, maybe 150, I would stay, maybe even 200 you could use, but anything more than that, let's put a filter on it. Let's get the whatever's inside your water. Unless you want to get a water test, see what's in there. It may have some copper and other elements that you could use in your water, so you don't even need to cycle them out. And check your pH. You want to make sure your pH isn't too crazy. I don't think that you need to mess with anything around the 5.5 to 7.5 range. That's just me personally. Some other people may disagree, but I feel like if you stay in that, the soil itself is going to create your pH. It has nothing to do with your water. Water is very important when you're putting it in, the pH, but you don't have to like stress on this like you do in synthetic growing, because synthetic growing, you're giving them available already available synthetic nutrients that needs a pH for that certain mineral or nutrient to be available to the plant. In organics, that's creating it all. They're going to search for their own amendments on their own with the good pH. So my pH in my soil right now, I got a soil test, is about 7, and I used a little bit of sulfur, Tiger Agsil, to bring it down. There's so many ways to go about this, which is why I want to tell you guys. And if I miss something, get a hold of me. I'd love to dive more deep into it with you. And we're going to in the future episodes. We're going to break these categories down individually more and more. We're going to have this whole board filled up with how I went about it and what companies you can use and price and all of that. So last but not least is your genetics. I felt like we need to get this on point for your genetics to succeed. So when you're going with genetics, there's so many good breeders out there now. There's a lot of white label breeders out there, and I don't think Seedsman is one of them. They get a bad rap sometimes, I think, just because of they blew up very fast, but now they're using a lot of in-house breeders like Compound Genetics and Elevate Seeds. So there's a lot of good companies that are running with Build a Soil, and even their own genetics are amazing these days. So check them out. Like I said, there's so many good ones out there. Crop Culture, Wheat Should Taste Good, Miles from Fermented Plant Extract, he's got very good genetics, and the list goes on and on and on. So if you need ideas of what you want to run next, get a hold of me and I'll tell you what I'd run, or maybe what I think you should run, or what I want to run. Because once you start piling up these genetics, it's like a kid in a candy shop. You go inside your seed bag and you don't know what to run next. It's so exciting. So you start diving into research about their genetic profile and everything. So that's all we got right now, Gromies. I wanted to just talk you through my favorite topics and how we're going to get there. And like I said, we're going to break these all down. We're going to tell you how I did things. We're not skipping any steps. I'm not hiding anything from you. So stay tuned, Gromies. We got a lot more roach clip pointing coming along. And thanks again for subscribing. Much love, and I hope you have a great night.